All right, next we have Larry Weathers and Cory Bubu, who are going to give a presentation and an update on what's happening in science. And prior to the meeting, Larry gave us a bunch of materials that we're going to use, that you want back at the end of the presentation, right? You want these back?
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
please,
okay.
please.
All right.
Well, thank you again for inviting us to share with you our challenges and our successes. We have some of each. So some of the slides I'm going to show are repeats of last year's with new data in it that show where we've moved to. So first I'd like to introduce to you Cory Bubu. She doesn't need an introduction as a teacher because she's been here for about 10 years. But she was at a point where she decided to stretch and take on some challenges, and we knew that we had a brand new elementary science curriculum with no additional support. So Cory has been doing a yeoman's job of working with the elementary teachers, providing professional development for them, helping them to figure out ways to organize materials and ways to kind of ease the content into the lives of the elementary school teachers, and to start with some writing examples and notebooking. And so she's been engaged in that, and we've been just very happy about the fact that the elementary teachers are supported in their science curriculum now. So when we get to a few elementary things, Cory will talk about what she's been doing, and we'll go from there. So what do I do here, Karen? Is this a left-right thing? Yeah, okay. Our mission, and it's right from our literature, our department literature. We really want to make science embedded in all our kids' awareness. It's that kind of a world, and they need to have the habits of mind of thinking about science, to be critical. And that isn't any different than it is in any other discipline. It's just it has a different language, and there are some different practices. So we have been focusing quite a bit on the last one here, science-specific literacy and reading, writing, and the mathematics necessary for career and college readiness. So I have distributed examples of some of our writing, and I'll come back to those in a little bit. But those are examples from grade 3, where Cory has started working with the elementary science notebooking, through grade 7 and 8, where we have books on cells and children's books on science topics, fiction books on science topics, where kids are expected to use the terminology, explain the principles as if you were talking to a 5-year-old. We have a new publication this year. It's called Science Weekly in the 8th grade, where the kids they read a science fiction novel, and then they comment on the science in it, about the reality of it or the fantasy of it, and have to make some judgments about that. But all of this, again, is getting to get kids to express their thoughts, to clarify them in writing, and to really think about embedding that kind of habit in their normal practice. There are examples there from our 11th and 12th grade elective of archaeology, where some of you may have seen the lawn being dug up now and then, and hopefully nobody stepped into the holes, but we mark them quite well. Where the kids have been digging and picking up artifacts, and they found, I forget, they're in there are pictures of them in those journals that you see, from cow bones to porcelain and whatever, that are, in the order of 100 years old. So, and they catalog these and describe them, and they're going through all of the standard techniques of archaeology. And this journal is created by the students. I think you'll find it's quite high quality writing, and as is fitting for one of our capstone courses. So I'll move on quickly. So we have new standards. They came out a little more than a year ago. They won't be tested until next year. And so we're still getting into the groove, in a sense, of figuring out how to shift over to these standards. We've started that process, and this is for the elementary and middle. The high school will probably be tested a year later, although we don't know that for sure. So you want to talk about this, Cory?
Sure. So thank you, Larry, for the wonderful introduction.
Our pleasure.
I was really excited to be able to go into a third grade classroom to prepare for running a PD session for the third grade teachers. I was going to help them look at how they could increase the amount of science practices that they were including in their lessons, and how they could use science journaling and notebooking to do that. So in my research, since I actually had never been into a third grade classroom before, I went and observed in Dallin, and the kids were so excited and enthusiastic, just getting to measure beans and cut lima beans in half. They were dissecting seeds and things. It was really cool just to see how, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed the third graders were. So that was really exciting for me. A little bit different than high schoolers. Although high schoolers, they're excited about science too. So the kids were doing a lab about what are seeds, what's the function of seeds, how do seeds grow. And so one of the activities is a seed soak lab, where they put the seeds in some water and they observe them growing overnight, and we were looking at the change in size and how could we tell how much bigger they had gotten, and the kids figured out that we should look at the mass, and so we were comparing the masses before and after, and it was just really, it was really neat. And then they have all of these opportunities to write about what they think is going to happen in their journal, take notes of their observations, explain why that happened, and sort of using science vocabulary to do all of that. And so after having seen that, I did a PD session for the third grade teachers, and we modeled this activity with those teachers and talked a little bit about, I don't think Larry has put them up yet, but the 8 science practices that are part of the NGSS, how you can actually address each of those 8 science practices by notebooking. And so we went through a bunch of examples. We're looking into a resource that's provided by the EBEC, which is the,
Which is what?
what's it stand for?
Oh, East Bay Educational Collaborative.
East Bay Educational Collaborative, and they have kind of a different take on notebooking, where they have some pre-set up graphic organizers for kids to be filling in, just to let them focus a little bit more on the science and a little bit less on copying terminology and writing out sentences. And it's going to be up to the teachers to decide how they want to weigh the pros and cons of having the kids create their own notebooks, which is really cool and really powerful, but they also have a limited amount of time to do their science. So we're sort of looking at how can notebooking help, and then what are some of the different options for notebooking.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the practices, the what we used to call inquiry skills, but the word inquiry meant so many different things that now call them practices. So, but these are the skills that scientists use as they do their normal work. So we're trying to have the kids model those and really do them. And this whole FOSS program, and as we're increasing our use of writing in the middle and high school in science, we see the kind of, when a student can explain what they see and think about something in writing, not only do they improve their retention of it, but they clarify what their thinking is. You know, by the time they go through a few drafts, it starts to get clearer in their mind. So we're really seeing some effects of that. So some other things, you know, this is not about the writing, but we really want to integrate technology more and more. You know, thanks again to the AEF for providing some infrared cameras. These are two examples of student handprints. You put a hand down on a table and then you photograph the table afterwards and you see where it was warm or where it wasn't. The photo on the right is a hand partly underneath a blanket. So you can see partway up the arm, you can see the heat being radiated, and down below that, it's more of a uniform temperature. So kids are exploring science principles through visual technology and things that we can't see normally. So, and again, the writing component in the 8th grade, you see examples of the children's storybooks, the technology review, the cell books. We have this going on in every grade, and it's growing. Moving to the high school, we have a lot of courses. We have some great, we're increasing our digital options, although in a discussion today, we acknowledge that sometimes as new digital options come up, they aren't as, they're not silver bullets. We have to figure out how to use them effectively, and it's a new strategy for teachers. The Journal of Amateur Field Archaeology, you see the issues of that here, and continuing that. Every semester that goes through archaeology produces one of those journals, totally by the student. This is another area of increased involvement. One of the practices back a few slides ago was modeling. And we have really been starting to delve into how do we use models more effectively. They're used all over the place in science and in politics and in economics and whatever, and the students should have more experience with that. So this is an example. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, worldwide group that was instrumental in the Paris Accord, used the model that we're using now. And it was developed at MIT, and several weeks ago, the environmental AP teacher and I took 6 students there for a training session, and so some of this is them using that modeling. It's in a UN kind of environment, where there are countries that are negotiating for climate change, or the factors that will affect it. How much, what are we going to do with taxes, and what are you going to do with commitment towards studies, and this and that. And so the model runs through, you can see on the bottom left here, it's a very, very precise model, and it uses, of course it's a model, it's not the reality, but it puts in the student data, and it actually makes a calculation of how much you've changed the climate, or how much you've lowered the climate, the temperature increase by. And it's a robust model. This is the model that was used at the Paris Accord. And so we brought those 6 students back, and they are now implementing that model in all of the environmental classes. So they're being the leaders. So we want to continue with our modeling efforts in all kinds of ways. We have some great awards this year. So National Teacher of the Month for January, Danielle Rad, our archaeology teacher. And that was from the American Association for Advancement of Science, the producers of Science Magazine. So, and then sitting next to me, Cory Bubu. So some of the regional science associations give awards for excellence in teaching. Cory received one, and she'll actually get the award in a few weeks, but she was already acknowledged for it in the Outstanding Science Educator, and we're proud of that. So, So this is just a rundown of our courses, and as you can see, our electives are numerous, and they're capstone courses. We expect the kids to use all the sciences when they take one of those electives. And our AP program keeps growing. Last year I showed you the first 4 lines of this, and now as we are enrolling kids for next year, and we're not done yet, I'm projecting that there are possibly 10 sections. It will certainly be 9, and it's looking like 10 right now. So what that is saying is that, you know, down below you can see our requests for these courses are greater, and we're not done yet because enrollment is still going on. So we're proud of that, and at the same time we want to be watchful. We don't want to overdo AP courses where it's not appropriate. We want to see how students manage them. We don't want them to take more than they can manage, and so we're trying to be watchful on both sides of that. The scores are growing. Last year I reported, you know, various courses and the percents of 3s, 4s, and 5, and this year you can see it's grown. A little dip, but sometimes it's cohort related, and it's hard to look at just for 1 year, but we're proud of the Enviro going from 46 to 73, and everybody in biology was a 3, 4, or 5. So, sorry, I didn't realize that this would be so small. So last year I showed you the left 2 groupings of graphs. Bottom graph is all students, top graph high needs students, and going from 14 to 15, we increased quite a bit in our proficient category. And this year, or from last spring, you know, we dipped a little bit, but if we look back 4 years, it just goes up and down. There's a little cyclic pattern to it. So we're keeping track of that. You know, we analyze the data. We look for ways we can improve. There's still room to grow there, and I always show this graph. I know that class size is by research shown not to be a real significant indicator of student success, but it is in terms of student accidents in class, in lab classes. So one of our continued goals is to really watch the class sizes in laboratory classes. You can see that after 24 here, it starts to rise, and by 28, it rises significantly. So that's one of our challenges and our concerns, you know, for a number of reasons: staffing, room availability, building adequacy, you know, and all that. So we want to keep our eyes on that. So that's the nutshell. So if you have any questions.
Questions, anyone? Strand?
How big are the chemistry classes, the labs, students?
Well, we have some that are, how many students?
In a lab?
We try to keep the kids who are, who choose the advanced level as opposed to the honors level. We try to keep those smaller. Those tend to be in the low 20s, 20 to 22, 23, which is a good number, and we're happy with that. But in order to do that, the honors level sections are more. And those students can generally handle that, but sometimes it just gets more than we have the facility for. So some of our honors level classes are up to 30.
I may.
Sure.
Are they doubling up at the stations? Your labs aren't set up for 30 students, are they?
No.
So they're...
No, we have
I'm just concerned
we
on
have
the
tables on the side
Right.
that act as lab stations.
I'm just
We-
concerned on a safety basis, that's all for
Groups
the,
of 4.
wow.
You have what?
Groups of 4 usually.
Groups of 4, and I know in some of Cory's anatomy classes, the sections are huge, and we've had to bring in extra tables as lab stations. So those are
don't misunderstand me. I think the programs are exciting, the growth in them. I can remember science, more or less, I'm ancient, tapering off. The enthusiasm was there at the elementary level, and because it became very, almost static at the high school level.
I think we're growing.
I think it's fantastic, just by looking at the environmental, the astronomy, the other courses.
Yeah, and we're
really congratulate you. I'm just concerned about safety.
Yes.
In the lab courses, that's
So
all.
are we, and, you know, we do all the things we can. We make sure our safety equipment is there. We have it checked. We, you know, we watch the desks. We try to arrange things so that the lab areas have a little bit more motion ability, and without kids, you know, kids can bump into each
Yes.
other's elbows in a basketball court, let alone in a science lab. So
Thank you,
we're trying to watch that.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Haney. Good question, yeah.
So on the FOSS kits, can you remind me, where are we on the rollout? Are we fully rolled out? Is this the first year? What's the status?
We are rolled out fully from 1st to 5th grade. So this was the first year for 4th and 5th to have their kits, but did all third teachers had them last year, 3rd grade and 2nd?
Right.
Some 2nd and some 1st?
We have a demographic adjustment we're continuing to make. For example, as our school population grows, if we look back 4 years ago or so, almost every elementary school, most of the elementary schools had 3 classrooms per grade level. Now, probably more than half of them, I would say, have 4. So as those numbers move along, we're having to buy extra kits. So we just bought, in a sense, a half rollout for next year, so that all those buildings that have 4 classrooms in a grade will have adequate numbers of kits. So we're still doing that, and it'll take, it takes a little while for the teachers to adjust to the new science practices, to be more inquiry-oriented. And so even though the equipment rollout is just about done, I think the teacher growth is still progressing, and it will for a few years.
Is there more PD planned for that? I did hear some discomfort from some of the teachers about what they were supposed to do with the kits, and the PD not being timely with when the kits were rolled out and stuff.
Yeah, we definitely have a lot of PD.
Corey,
already.
can you talk about the new program we're going to have next year?
Yes.
Sure.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
I have volunteers or
Stipend.
stipended positions from teachers from each of the grades 1 through 5. And our first goal is to get together this summer and start looking at some resources that we can put together to help make everybody's life easier. And we have a website where we're gonna start compiling all of these things that we come up with, revised scope and sequences, snapshot lessons, anything that we can think of that will sort of streamline things for the teachers. And then in the fall, the same group of teachers hopefully will again get a new stipend to help us plan PD. And so they'll start looking at what things would be the most useful, and then being able to try to put things together where we can model those skills and support the teachers a little bit better that way by sort of asking them what they need.
So we're calling them teacher leaders, and so science teacher leaders. And so that hopefully will help a bit. Another thing we're exploring is we would rather have our teachers working with the kids directly on content and not fiddling with counting the straws that are in the kits or the wheels or whatever. So we're exploring models for that. And there are a number of them out there. Some cost more, some cost less. And we're looking at ways that we might be able to work with some partners that will help to refurbish those kits, bring them back to the teachers, have them ready to go, take that time away from the teachers, the nuts and bolts work, and have them working with the kids more. So.
Thing that I think more about than anything else, because I think that you guys are doing a great job, but you mentioned facilities and context, and that we're embarking on a high school project. And we're also opening up new classrooms and new science classrooms over the Gibbs, and we're going to be able to have a little more space to work with at the Addison. So I guess my question to you is just maybe a 30-second off the top of your head wish list, dream, vision for what science classrooms might look at Arlington High School after we're done with the building project.
That's a good and challenging question, only because there are a lot of options, and of course, our wish list it's like a kid in a candy shop, you know.
Yeah, I mean,
And
I
that's
want
what-
to know about the candy.
That's what we should be doing. And we have been going around visiting schools that have recent building projects, Weston, Winchester, and others, and trying to get examples. We're seeing things that are common, that look really good. And now it's a matter of course, there are constraints from the MSBA, and there are constraints from dollars, and we have to see what we can work with, but it's going to be a whole lot better.
I mean, programmatically, we can define things that we think we need in terms of our curriculum going
Yes,
towards the
yes.
MSBA, because it's not a number alone just based on enrollment count. So I'm encouraging you to,
Right.
to really be thoughtful about how you're mapping out your hopes and dreams.
Great, I'm glad to hear that support. That is what we're trying to do. In fact, we were trying to start not implement, but to select a new curriculum at the Addison, so that when the move to the Gibbs occurred, we'd be ready to go with some brand new stuff. We're starting new standards then, new testing is occurring, we've got new rooms, so why not have a new curriculum? And what ended up happening is that because the standards in science are so new, the publishers, you know, there's that lag time, and they're just coming out with the new programs. And so we were zeroing in on one we thought was really pretty good. And 2 weeks later, another one comes out that looks a whole lot better. So we have slowed down that process so that we can just let that lag get beyond us a little bit. And so that by maybe next fall, we'll be ready to make some recommendations that way. Because we thought that there are too many good things coming out right now, that if we just chose one now, we probably wouldn't have necessarily the best option.
And I know that a lot of people are looking at tradition, Arlington High tradition. I hope the one that we don't keep is the pillars in the middle of the lab.
All right.
Oh, we're so nostalgic about those though, you know, I mean, what would we do without them?
Like a Fenway Park obstructed view.
Yeah.
Well, the utilitarian part of those is we hang skeletons from them. We mount projector shelves on them, and, you know, but half the kids in the room can't see the
Paint
teacher.
DNA models on them.
Larry and
That-
Cory, thank you so much for
You're
being here.
welcome.
This is a
Yes.
great presentation.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it. We're going to pass your materials to the left. Oh, this. Oh, yeah.